Thyssen. Van Derzen. Wiganowski. Wilcox. Anderson. Rousseau. David Blaska. Mike Blaska. Brongan. Butler. Clowder. Cornwell. Kraft. Davis. Gwenda. Hanneman. Heiliger. Hellenbrand. Hendrick. Jansen. Kesterson. Kiley. Lau. McCormick. McDonald. Miller. Moorbacher. Olson. Peterson. Ryan. Becker.
Here. Oh, can we turn off that fan back there? It's kind of noisy. Thank you. We have 33 present, 6 absent. Supervisors Kesterson, Wilcox, Brongan, and Simon are excused. Supervisor Ripp will lead us in an inspirational message this evening. Please rise. No, please sit. Remain seated.
Very briefly. All right. Just very briefly, we've got a long meeting tonight, so rather than ramble on for a while, I think we'll just skip it and go right on to the pledge.
Supervisor Ripp will then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You know, there's no air being exchanged on this floor for several months, but the fans seemed a bit noisy, so I've asked that it be turned off. If it gets stuffy in here, maybe we can open some of the back windows, but we'll play that by ear. Moving on then to our agenda, special matters. Item 1, Veterans Service Commission, expression of appreciation to the board. Supervisor Wiganowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight I'd like to introduce you to 2 people from the Veterans Service Commission, where I've had the pleasure of serving for the last 4 years. They've been pleased with many of the actions that came from this body, and not too often that you get a thank you for what you do, and they'd like to express their concern and their thanks to you. And I'd like to introduce Chairperson Connie Allard and John Bird, member, and John would like to speak to the body. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Veterans Service Commission, we wish to thank the Dane County Board of Supervisors and Dane County Executive Falk for their support of both Resolution 119, providing funding for repair of the fountain at our Veterans Memorial Coliseum, and for adopting Ordinance Amendment 20, which in effect expanded veterans' preference hiring points to peacetime veterans. We believe your action is important because it not only honors the legacy your predecessors established 30 years ago, in which you have decided to continue, it is also a positive message to our young men and women who are currently serving in the military. We are proud to live and serve in a county which continues to honor their friends and neighbors who faithfully serve their country. Not every American has been called upon to serve or sacrifice in this way, but every one of us have benefited from those who have. In times of turmoil, the courage and faith of millions of American veterans have sustained our country. Again, we want to commend you and thank you for your support. Signed, Lorraine Connie Allard, Chair. Connie speaks softly, but she's a retired Marine and she carries a big stick. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In an attempt not to embarrass Supervisor Heiliger, he also has an announcement. This is a pretty important date, or right around this date for him. So Supervisor Heiliger, if you'd address the body.
Should.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really do think that the Veterans Service Commission in this county is outstanding, and they do a great job. I just wanted to share one thing with you, and it's probably the inappropriate time, but it really means a lot to me. Because this is the 25th anniversary of walking out of Vietnam yesterday. So this morning was the first time I had woken up in freedom after 6 years, 5 years, 9 months, and 4 days to be specific. But anyway, thank you very much for the time, and I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you. Next item is Resolution 267, congratulating Deborah Coe Bradish on her retirement from Pecata. Whereas Deborah Coe Bradish has devoted 18 years in service to the prevention of alcohol and drug abuse as a staff member of the Prevention and Intervention Center for Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse, known as Pecata, and whereas Deborah Coe Bradish has served as executive director of Pecata for the past 6 years, and whereas through her efforts thousands of people in Dane County have ameliorated and prevented their own or others' involvement in behavior that debilitates their lives, and whereas Deborah Coe Bradish has assisted and participated in the efforts of numerous other human service agencies, both as service provider and administrator. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dane County Board of Supervisors hereby congratulates Deborah Coe Bradish on her retirement and expresses its appreciation for her commitment and dedication to the citizens of Dane County. And be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be presented to Deborah Coe Bradish as a token of our esteem. Moved by Supervisor Clowder, seconded by Supervisor Heiliger. Discussion. If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Resolution is adopted. No. We'll make sure that she gets a copy of the resolution. Are there any announcements tonight by supervisors? Supervisor Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief announcement. Before our next meeting, or just prior to it, when you come down, I hope you'll come a little early next week, or next meeting, which would be the first one in March 5th, I believe it is. There'll be a resolution here declaring Hazardous Material Week, March 2nd through the 8th, I believe it is, and Kathy Krusek is here tonight. She's made arrangements to give you a note about this and a reminder beforehand. It'll come to your mailbox that week before, but also that night there'll be one of the county's, the area's new vehicles for hazardous material, not only training but on site for attending anything that would happen in the regional area, really. So I hope you'll come down and view that vehicle that you're helping fund and pay for and take care of. It's quite an impressive vehicle. And also there'll be a small tape in the hallway just outside the chambers here on a tape we put together regarding information on hazardous materials. So I hope you'll all plan on taking advantage of that, and please come down and view it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Van Dusen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the Cultural Affairs Commission, I'm honored tonight to be able to officially unveil the 1998 edition of the annual Dane County Art Poster, and to acknowledge our 3 corporate contributors who helped make possible this enormously popular community tradition. And they are the Wisconsin Power and Light Foundation, M&I Bank, and Nelson Industries of Stoughton, Wisconsin. This year's selection features a Wisconsin farmstead bathed in the glow of a fading summer sunset. It's titled Scarecrow's Twilight and was painted by Madison artist Randall Burnt. The figure pictured by the barn is in fact a bachelor farmer neighbor that Randall remembers from his own childhood on a Wisconsin farm. Thanks to the generous financial support of our corporate donors, 13,000 copies of the poster will be distributed without charge to schools, libraries, hospitals, nursing homes, community centers, and other public spaces throughout Dane County. In addition to the county executive's office, poster pickup sites this year have been expanded to include 15 municipal halls in Black Earth, Cottage Grove, Cross Plains, Deerfield, Fitchburg, Marshall, Mazomanie, McFarland, Middleton, Monona, Monhor, Stoughton, Sun Prairie, and Verona. Free bookmarks, and you have one at your desk, highlighting a detail of the painting, are available at all area libraries through the cooperation of the Dane County Library Service. And once again, we want to thank our 3 private sector donors for joining with us to make projects like this possible for the residents of Dane County, and thank them heartily. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Shore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to bring to the attention the County Board Supervisors, as well as those of you who are here visitors tonight. I'm also going to give you an opportunity to participate and to make a contribution. There is, what is my next cause, I'm sure you're asking. Mary Kirkendall serves with me on the Youth Commission, and she brought to our attention tonight that there is an East Coast college tour scheduled for April 1st through the 8th for young black males from the West High School area, and it's a college tour of predominantly black colleges in the eastern United States. There are 2 students of W-2 families who have a 3.0 grade point average or better who do not have the money, obviously, to go on this trip, who would greatly benefit from seeing these colleges. The tour is, the cost is $275 per person. They're going to American University, George Mason, Georgetown, Morgan State, Virginia Union, Johns Hopkins, and so on. They're also visiting the Library of Congress, the Smithsonian Institute, the Kennedy Space Center, and the Lincoln Theater. This price includes the transportation, food, and all accommodations. And I have told her that I would be willing to make a contribution toward at least one of these students to attend, and I think this would be something that would be very important for them to see, that there is a school that they can go to that is predominantly black and that they are in the majority for a change. So if anyone would like to make any kind of a contribution, please let me know or call Mary Kirkendall at 251-3438. 251-3438. I'll make sure too that the county board staff has this information and will appreciate any and all contributions. This is really a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Shore reminded me that this is Black History Month, and this weekend at South Madison Neighborhood Center on Saturday there'll be a humongous, tremendous Jubilee celebration beginning at 6 o'clock, and you're all welcome, and it's a free celebration. And then on Sunday, they have a traditional, this must be the 4th or 5th year, dinner, and you come in and you eat all of the soul food, and then each child leaves away with a Pleasant Company doll or something very important in celebration of Black History Month. But you don't have to be a black person to attend, so please, any one of you, just come on out, bring the family. It's a good time, few speeches, more eating than anything. And that's in South Madison, in my district.
Thank you. Further announcements? If not, our next item of business is approval of bills and accounts. Is there a motion to approve the bills that are places? Moved by Supervisor Kiley, seconded by Supervisor Olson. Discussion, Supervisor Kiley.
Yeah, Gene said that there's an addendum in our table, our desk, and that's when we're moving.
Yes. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor of approval say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. They are approved. Approval of proceedings of January 8th and 22nd, 1998. Is there a motion? Moved by Supervisor McCormick, seconded by Supervisor Kraft. Discussion. If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. They are approved. Zoning petitions. Are there any requests for separation of any of the zoning petitions before us? If not, what is before us on each of these petitions is the recommendation of the zoning committee. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor of adopting the recommendation of the zoning committee say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Those recommendations are adopted. We'll move now to ordinances. Ordinance Amendment 16, amending Chapter 10 of the Dane County Code of Ordinances, Schools as Conditional Uses. Zoning and Natural Resources recommends adoption. Public Protection and Judiciary recommends adoption. Discussion. Supervisor Heiliger.
Could I ask Mr. Gregorius what the count was from the towns on this? I assume they had got, I know we had the option. And this was in here, by the way, when we voted.
The count was 7 in favor and 11 opposed before the time ran out. So basically it was approved by default.
Supervisor Anderson.
Also a question, Mr. Gregorius. For purposes of this chapter, a school is not a governmental use. Would that apply to the University of Wisconsin?
That's a very interesting question. I think the amendment in itself that's before the the county board tonight was really not taken in that context. I think the amendment itself was to basically put religious, private, and public schools into one distinct class, and that being schools.
Supervisor Van Duzen. Oh, Supervisor Anderson. Supervisor Van Duzen. Supervisor Salkin, any more questions?
Jim, I hate to put you on the spot, but this is going to be a portion of Chapter 10, correct?
That's correct.
So following Supervisor Anderson, when we say a school is not a governmental use, we are then going to say that for all purposes within Chapter 10, that is how a school is defined.
I think with relative to the issue that, again, I've addressed, and we're talking about public schools, and this issue came up as a result, I believe, and I'm not quite sure if the Corporation Council is here tonight, as a result of the Country Day School issue.
Yes, it did, and that's assuredly true. But can we have within Chapter 10 two definitions of what a school is relative to the question of government use?
I think with respect to the issue that Supervisor Anderson and you are addressing tonight, I would say that they would be separate issues.
There would. All right, thank you.
As long as Mr. Gregorius is up here, are there any further questions of Mr. Gregorius at this point? Guess not. Thanks. At least not now. So is there further discussion on Ordinance Amendment 16? Supervisor Van Duzen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to explain this amendment. When Country Day School sought to locate their school this year in Martinsville, we looked into the ordinance, and the school that they were located in had been a private school, a religious school, excuse me, or public school. And our ordinance said that private schools are treated separately from public schools or religious schools. And it seemed to me that that was an artificial and an unfair distinction for our ordinances to make, that a school should be a school should be a school. And what this ordinance seeks to do is to make sure that all schools, whether they're private, whether they're religious, or whether they're public, are treated equally under our ordinances. And I hope you would support it.
Thank you. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor of adopting Ordinance Amendment 16 say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. It is adopted. Ordinance Amendment 25, amending Chapter 67 of the Dane County Code of Ordinances, Airport Rates and Charges. Airport recommends adoption, as does Public Works, Personal Finance, and Public Protection and Judiciary. Discussion. If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. It is adopted. Ordinance Amendment 28, amending Chapter 25 of the Dane County Code of Ordinances, authorizing grant assurances. Public Protection and Judiciary recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. Discussion. Not all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. It is adopted. Award of contracts. Resolution 216, authorizing employment agreement for Facilities Manager Frank Alfano. Public Works recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. Discussion. If not, all those, Supervisor Anderson.
I don't like to get up and discuss this, but there have been some concerns raised about the operation of this building, and I'd like to see an evaluation of those in the next year. And I've always voted against 5-year contracts, and I guess I would like to amend this contract to change the date 2002 to August 31st, 1998.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Supervisor Wiganowski. 1998. So that would be for less than a year. 1999. So 1999, and that Supervisor Wiganowski understands it to be 1999. So the motion before us is to amend Resolution 216 to make the ending date of the contract to be August 31, 1999. Discussion on that amendment. If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. No. We'll do a roll call because I'm unsure of the vote. So if you're in favor of that amendment, you'll say aye. If you're opposed, you'll say no. Clerk will call the roll.
Supervisor Ripp.
No.
Redkowski. Salkin. Salov. Sapansky. Shore. Stovig. Tyson. Van Derzen. Wignowski. Anderson. Rousseau. David Blaska. Mike Blaska. Butler. Clouder. Cornwell. Kraft. Davis. Goenda. Hanneman. Heiliger. Hellenbrand. Hendrick. Jansen. Kiley. Lau. McCormick. McDonald. Miller. Morbacher. Olson. Peterson. Ryan. Becker.
No. The vote is 16 ayes and 19 noes. The motion to amend fails. On Resolution 216 then, further discussion. If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. It is adopted. Resolution 231, a resolution petitioning the Secretary of Transportation for airport improvement and by county boards airport improvement aid by County Board of Supervisors, Dane County, Wisconsin. Public Works recommends adoption. Airport recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. Discussion. If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. It is adopted. Resolution 238, authorization to purchase a bike trail easement from Fitchburg Research Park Associates for the Capital City Trail. Public Works recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. Parks recommends adoption. Discussion. If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. It is adopted. Resolution 243, extending contract for Dane County EMS Medical Director. Public Protection Judiciary recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. I have a note indicating that the fiscal note in your packet is incorrect, but there should be a correct fiscal note at each supervisor's place. On Resolution 243, is there discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. It was adopted. Resolution 247, awarding 1998 purchase of service contract, Department of Corrections, electronic monitoring program. Public Protection and Judiciary recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. Apparently there's an editorial correction that has already been made in our packets from 1996 to 1998. On Resolution 247, discussion. Not all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. It's adopted. Resolution 248, authorizing a contract to accept highway safety grant funds, speed waves. Public Protection and Judiciary recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. Discussion. If not, a 2/3 vote is required. If there's no objection, we'll adopt it unanimously. Hearing none, it is so adopted. Resolution 249, authorizing a contract to accept highway safety grant fund saturation patrols. Public Protection and Judiciary recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. Discussion. If not, again, a 2/3 vote is required. If there's no objection, it will be adopted unanimously. Hearing none, it is so adopted. Resolution 260, amending lease at Dane County Job Center. Health and Human Needs recommends adoption. Public Works recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. That was a 7-0 vote. Discussion. Not all those in favor of Resolution 260 say aye. Opposed say no. It is adopted. Now we move on to resolutions. Resolution 239, acceptance of hazardous materials emergency response training grant. Public Protection Judiciary recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. Discussion. Now a 2/3 vote is required. If there's no objection, it will be adopted unanimously. Hearing none, it is so adopted. Resolution 240, acceptance of hazardous materials emergency preparedness planning subgrant. Public Protection Judiciary recommends adoption. Personal Finance recommends adoption. Discussion. Again, a 2/3 vote is required. If there's no objection, it will be adopted unanimously. Hearing none, it is so adopted. Resolution 241, directing the Zoo Commission and Zoo Director to develop options to retain the monkey colonies at Henry Vilas Zoo. Zoo Commission recommends adoption with 2 amendments. Those amendments read, be it further resolved that if financial resources can't be found at the Dane County Board, direct Zoo Director to work with the UW for an acceptable permanent placement. Be it further resolved that the Dane County Board direct the staff and the County Executive's Office to review and seriously consider increased funding from the Dane County budget for the zoo. Public Works recommended adoption as amended by the Zoo Commission. Ways and Means recommended adoption as amended by the Zoo Commission with the following amendments: deleting Amendment 2 and changing Amendment 1 to read, be it further resolved that the Dane County Board directs the Zoo Director to seek acceptable alternative placement. What is before us is the Public Works recommendation, which is the Zoo Commission's recommendation. We have a number of registrants. I will call them out in the order in which I have received them. I would ask each individual whose name I call to come to the podium on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. We will take 10 speakers in a row, at which time we'll stop and permit the board to ask questions of the speakers if they have any. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Our first registrant. And after, by the way, I have gone through all of those who have registered wishing to speak, then I will read those who have registered but not indicated a desire to speak. Our first registrant is Rick Bogle, 136.5 North Dewey Avenue, Jefferson, Wisconsin, to be followed by Leslie Arena. Mr. Bogle. You have 5 minutes.
Just everybody can hear me. The 7 regional primate research centers were all begun in the early and mid 1960s. The rationale for their creation was quite simple. Monkeys and apes seem so much like humans that we would be able to solve many human health problems by using them as research subjects. This seemed on the surface to be a reasonable expectation. Their organs are similar to ours, they're in the same places as ours are, and they look a heck of a lot more like us than other laboratory animals like frogs and rats and dogs and those sorts of things, or even guinea pigs. What was not really understood in the mid-60s was how the subtle differences in our biochemistry would make these expected breakthroughs nearly non-existent. Some discoveries that have been made, however, have been truly startling and have pointed to unexpected and uncomfortable similarities between humans and other primates. For instance, the primate centers have discovered that raising baby monkeys away from their mothers or other caring adult monkeys results in subtle retardation and impaired immune systems. This, however, continues to be the way the primate centers raise infant monkeys today throughout the United States. Research at the centers has shown that the areas of the human and rhesus brain responsible for regulating emotion are nearly identical in construction and size. The implication is that both species share common emotional responses, and that monkeys may even be more emotional than us due to the relative size of this portion of the brain. These studies imply that the love we feel for our children and family members may not be unique to humans. Throughout the committee meetings concerning this resolution, I've heard the primate center staff repeatedly speak about how much they care about these animals and about how much their counterparts in Tulane will also care for them. When they say that they care for these animals, it does not mean the same thing as I mean when I say that I care for my cat. Or does it mean the same thing that the 1,500 people who signed the petition to do something for these monkeys meant when they said that they cared for them? The Primate Center veterinarians do care about the monkeys. They care about them the same way that your mechanic cares for your car. They want to make sure that the monkeys are healthy so that they can be ready for the injections that they're going to receive at the primate centers that they know are going to kill them. They want them to be ready to survive the invasive surgeries to place the catheters in their brain. They want them to be healthy enough so that when they're injected with ethanol on a regular basis, that they'll survive that, and we can understand how retarded their babies will be when they're born. The Primate Center doesn't use the word care in the same sense as I believe most of us would use the word. As a school teacher, I'm really interested in history, and it seems to me that history can be considered as a study of decisions. In school, we learn about a decision to go to war or a decision to end discrimination. We seem to remember two kinds of decisions most clearly, those that seem violent and those that seem compassionate. Often we look back on the violent decisions with confusion and discomfort. We don't understand why the effort to end segregation in the South was so violently and steadfastly resisted. Similarly, we look back on compassionate decisions with pride and admiration. I've never heard of anyone in history who was accused of being too kind or caring too much about others. Today, at this 11th hour, you have to decide either to ignore the history of these monkeys and ignore the similarity that they have to us, or you have to make an effort on their behalf. Either way, the decision you make today will become a part of the history of how humans have decided to treat the other residents of our planet. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next, we have Leslie Arena, 3106 Center Avenue, Madison, representing the Alliance for Animals. She'll be followed by David Wade.
I don't know if there's anywhere I can set this. This is a picture of stump-tail macaque monkeys from the Vilas Zoo caring for a newborn baby. As was already said, my name is Leslie Arena. I'm with the Alliance for Animals, president of the board of directors. Please don't hold it against me. I am also a member of the Monkey Protection Committee, which is an ad hoc committee started about last summer because of the Vilas monkey issue. I urge you all to please pass Resolution 241. My reasons for this, I will go into. These monkeys have been at the zoo in our community for over 30 years. They were supposed to be used for observational research only, pursuant to an agreement that was outlined in 1989 by the Primate Research Center. This policy agreement was broken numerous times, and many of the monkeys have already been taken out of the zoo facility and used for experimentation, which resulted in death. This is in clear violation. These monkeys are supposed to be protected, and that's what I'm asking all of you to help do now, is to protect them. If they go to Tulane, they will not be protected from invasive experimentation. The university, when they took some of these monkeys out of the zoo facility, used them here for research, or they sold them to other facilities and made over $200,000 on the monkeys. I understand that we all have, budget concerns. I'm a property taxpayer and been a resident of Dane County for 24 years. I know that everybody's concerned about money tonight, and just generally speaking. When I spoke with UW Board of Regents member Jonathan Berry earlier this month, he was very gracious in the offer of the university to pay for the care of the monkeys at the zoo facility till the end of this year. I think it's a decent offer. It's more than we got before, where basically the university was willing to donate the monkeys with no care or cost of care for funding them. I would urge Dane County supervisors, Executive Falk, to ask the university to fund them beyond that, or to perhaps give some sort of an endowment for the monkeys. I really feel this is a community responsibility, but it's primarily a university responsibility to care for these monkeys, and I really hope that we can accomplish that. Alliance for Animals has been working very hard to help protect the monkeys. We're raising money, we are alerting the public, and probably making more of a stink than all of you would like to see made about this. But I don't apologize for that. I think it's important, and we're not going to give up. So, thank you.
Thank you. We'll give this back. Next, David Wade, 218 Jackson Street, Madison, to be followed by Paula Ranelli.
I just was hoping that you all will pass this resolution. It's been my privilege to care for these animals at the zoo for the last 7 years. I've come here to hope that I can tell you if you have any questions, anything from the safety of the facility to the cost or anything like that, perhaps I can share them with you. That's basically all I want to say. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them.
Thanks. We'll hear from a few more speakers and then take questions. Thank you. Next, Paula Ranelli, 4530 White Aspen, Madison, to be followed by Rob Lottridge.
Oh, hi, my name is Paula Ranelli. I've seen these monkeys since I started college here in 1964. I'm a property taxpayer, and I've been a Dane County resident for 30 plus years, almost as long, just about as long as the monkeys have been a Dane County resident. My concern is with these particular monkeys and not with the pros and cons and issues of research on animals in general. I'm just very concerned with these particular monkeys. They've provided joy to this community for 30 years. They deserve a safe retirement home, if not here at other sanctuaries, and not another primate research center such as Tulane, where we really can't guarantee their fate. And remember, it was a primate center, Tulane, just like this primate center, that broke their promise, and they're going to be even farther away. I urge you to adopt Resolution 241, and hopefully we can work with the UW and in some way urge them to put forth funds that they have and funds that they've made from these monkeys to extend beyond March 2nd so that we can work for a better solution and a more acceptable solution for these monkeys, and not on such short notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, you have Rob Lottridge, 2941 Harvey Street, Madison, to be followed by Tina Caskey.
Hi, my name is Rob Lottridge. I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of my friends and family and neighbors who couldn't be here due to other obligations, but they definitely support this to be passed. I'd like to keep the monkeys here, or we all would, I think. Keep them safe from any invasive research. I think it would definitely make Madison look like a really great place to know that we do have compassion for these animals. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Tina Caskey, 145 Judge Street, Madison, to be representing Alliance for Animals, to be followed by Betsy Munio.
Hello, thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak on this. I am the Executive Director of the Alliance for Animals here in Madison, and we have been working diligently for a long time to see this come to this. We're just hoping that you will pass the resolution and support the animals. You're going to hear some things, I'm assuming from the Primate Center, about the fact that these animals will be used as a breeding colony for research at Tulane Primate Labs. Now, a breeding colony for what? These animals were supposed to be protected, as you heard, under an agreement, and there is no guarantee that the animals will survive the experimentation that they will endure at Tulane. A breeding facility like that has so many animals. I think that, we don't really need to send them our monkeys. We have been working very hard to find sanctuaries. If there's no way to keep the animals here in Madison, which would be unfortunate, I would hope that we could at least keep one or more colonies here. But we have found 2 sanctuaries in San Antonio that would be willing to take at least 40 apiece, which would really greatly reduce the cost of the facility. And that would be something to consider. We've been working with applying for grants and foundations and trying to raise money to help with the care of the animals. So we're not just sitting here telling you to pick up the ball and run with it and leave it in your laps. We're willing to do our share. So I handed out some information on what we've accomplished so far, and I just want to make it very clear to you all that we're not done, and we will be very happy to help see this happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Betsy Munio, 5148 Anton, to be followed by Alexander, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the last name, Kindyuk, perhaps. I apologize for that pronunciation. Betsy Munio. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm speaking to you as a fifth-generation Dane County resident. My predecessors are Bond, Tipple, Hanen, Bennett, and my last name is Monroe. I'm a fourth-generation woman to graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus. My great-grandmother attended the University of Wisconsin. There were only 3 buildings on campus, North and South Hall and Bascom Hall. So I come from a long family line in being in the Dane County area. When I used to come to the zoo as a small child with my grandmother and mother, I would always insist on visiting Monkey Island first. For those of us who weren't around at the time, Monkey Island was surrounded by a moat and had a huge wheel on top of the island. I seem to recall that you could see this wheel at a great distance. I referred to it as the Ferris wheel and loved to see the monkeys playing on it. Of course, you all know the Monkey Island is no longer there, but the fascination that children and adults have with monkeys is universal. Speaking for 3 generations of Dane County residents, I urge the board to maintain this wonderful resource. I also spoke to my brother on the phone, and I asked him what his favorite memory of the Violet Zoo was. Of course, he said the Monkey Island. Even though the monkeys are in a new enclosure, I'm sure that their impact is great on this generation of young people. Please support Resolution 241.
Thank you. I'm sorry I mispronounced your name, and I'm mispronouncing this next name, Alexander Kindyuk. Is that anywhere close? 975 High Street, Madison, to be followed by Rick Lane.
Yeah, I live right in the neighborhood, and I'm here to support the monkeys, and I'm encouraging you to pass the resolution to keep the monkeys here. I've watched these monkeys for the 4.5, a little bit more years, ever since I moved to Madison. I watched 4 alpha males taking over after each other. Joey, Jeroen, Eve, Linus now is the present, and I think the monkeys are deserve to stay here, a little better place, or find for Reese's a little bit better place to where they're going to be sent now, like was mentioned before, some sanctuaries. And I encourage you all to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Lane, 1524 Felland Street, Stoughton, to be followed by Joe Thu.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation for the opportunity to address you this evening. I'm here to speak about the issue of the zoo monkey resolution, and I'd like to point out that I'm here as a county resident, and I'm not representing the University of Wisconsin, but I am an employee. Specifically, my job at the university is in research administration involving animal research. I just wanted to be upfront with my background, or as some might say, my bias. Having provided you with that, I'd like to make a few comments about the reality of this resolution. It's interesting that as a society, there are 2 areas where we can get pretty passionate, pretty emotional, and probably somewhat just downright goofy, and that's about kids and animals. And I know for myself that's true, and I would guess for a lot of you, you have similar emotions and stuff in those areas. And I also know from personal experience that that emotional aspect makes this a difficult decision. Some of you that do know me know that until I decided not to seek re-election last spring, or as some say, I was struck with sanity, I spent 6 years on the Stoughton School Board. And as you might expect, school boards are constantly faced with separating emotion from reality so that you make the best sound long-term decisions. And that's really the challenge that you have before you with this resolution. It's to separate the emotion from the reality of this issue and to carefully read between the lines as to what a yes vote really means. While the words of the resolution appear only to call for further study, unless this is just a resolution of convenience to delay a decision, you cannot vote to approve the resolution without having a commitment beyond that study. And let me explain what I mean by that. In the resolution, it talks about one option as being private funding of the monkey facility. And based on the County Department of Administration's analysis, annual costs of maintaining this facility runs at $211,000. Thus, to provide a foundation to assure the long-term availability of those dollars would require a base somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 million. And that's using the interest to support the annual operating costs. So as the movie says, show me the money. I know at this point of no existing groundswell of support to generate that level of dollars. And please remember, and this is very important, that this decision is very long-term. With continued breeding and the long lifespan of the monkeys, that colony of animals could be around practically forever. Let's examine another suggestion in the resolution, the university. As I stated, I'm not representing the university, but it's been widely reported that the university is seeking another location for these animals as a result of lost funding. That's what this is really all about. And you know, that should say something, that all the effort that the university is going through to find an alternative location for these animals, and it's directly related to that loss of funding. Let me also tell you, I don't want to get into all the specifics of federal funding and how it works, but there's not some federal agency sitting out there willing to write a check to support those animals as a zoo display. So that brings us down to the third option, and that's Dane County coming up with money to support the animals. And that option speaks to the reality of this resolution. If you're willing to spend the money to study this as the resolution calls for, you better be willing to call it what it is, and that's a resolution to study to expand the zoo operation. Unless you believe that some private source will come up with several $1 million or the university will miraculously discover a pot of money, the only other option is a vote to expand the zoo. That's what this is about if the county is to take over that operation. To expand the zoo begs the question, where will that money come from? And I have a pretty good sense of what the costs are to provide care for those animals. And while the Department of Administration did a nice job on their analysis, some of their projections may be on the low side. But even assuming that they're accurate at $211,000, you still have to decide, you know, what are the priorities? Will the money come from other sources? Say maybe cut the Sheriff's Department budget, Highway Department, Parks Department, or will you have to look at the entire spectrum of human services from youth to the elderly to find other sources?
You have 20 seconds.
Thank you. If you don't want to cut, then you're going to raise taxes, and you know the political popularity of raising taxes. So the real resolution here is: are you going to vote to expand the zoo, and is there a real groundswell to support that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Joe Thulin, 1717 Chapin Lane, Stoughton.
Good evening. My name is Joe Tulin. I'm a resident of Stoughton. My purpose here is to provide information and insights that will aid the board as it considers Resolution 241. I'm a veterinarian employed by the University of Wisconsin. My clinical expertise is in the specialty field of laboratory animal medicine. And regardless of what another speaker said earlier, I do care about the animals that are under my care in the same manner as any practitioner cares for the animals under their care. I'd like to make 2 points clear to the board. First, I believe it is highly unlikely that a study as called for in the resolution will yield options that are both fiscally feasible and provide adequate care for the monkeys. Second, the university's plan to send rhesus monkeys that are currently housed at the zoo to the Tulane Primate Center is an appropriate option with no cost to the county. The board needs to fully understand what resources will be necessary to keep these animals at the Henry Valley Zoo. Managing this monkey colony requires specialized facilities and a highly trained staff to provide for their complex social, veterinary, medical, and other needs. Indeed, it is doubtful that it would even be feasible to keep them here without drawing extensively on the resources of the University of Wisconsin. Presently, the monkey facility at the zoo is operated as a satellite to the UW Primate Research Center. The monkey facility at the zoo is the care of these animals routinely draws on the Primate Center's central facilities and professional staffing. Clearly, the current zoo facilities and staffing alone are not adequate to meet the needs of these animals. Just some points to consider are: where and at whose expense will suitable veterinary medical and surgical facilities be located? And who is available with sufficient qualifications to provide appropriate medical care and monitor the social aspects of the county? And at what cost? Fact is that these resources are simply not readily available in Dane County, in the Dane County community. I believe the board should ask the zoo director and staff plainly whether they are willing and whether they believe they will be able to care for these animals adequately. This does not need a study. In any case, keeping these animals at the Henry Valley Zoo will require significant augmentation of the zoo's facilities and staffing. Obviously, this will require significant funding increases. The university's plan to send the rhesus monkeys to Tulane University's Primate Center addresses all these issues. The fact is that in developing the plan, the university's primary concern was the well-being of the animals. This plan is considered optimal because we can all be confident that the conditions at Tulane will be equal to or surpass all of those at the UW or zoo. We know Tulane is subject to all the same laws and regulations pertaining to the humane care and use of animals as is the University of Wisconsin, and that these animals, their facilities, and their program for animal care and use will be evaluated periodically by veterinary medical officers of the USDA, as well as veterinarian and scientist representatives of the Association for Assessment and Accreditation of Laboratory Animal Care. Because of this, we know that Tulane has a rigorous internal program for oversight of the humane care and use of animals. We know that they have an institutional animal care and use committee responsible for this oversight. And incidentally, this committee, by regulation, includes at least one voting member who represents the interests of the community at large. We know the Tulane program has a proven track record and capacity for adequately providing for all the complex needs of these animals. I and many others believe that the transfer of these university-owned rhesus monkeys to the Tulane Primate Center is the most humane option that exists or is likely to be found. So in summary, I am opposed to the resolution for 3 reasons. I believe that the study will show what we already know, namely that it will not be fiscally feasible to keep the animals and care for them adequately. Second, the university already has looked at options for permanent placement of the animals and has arrived at one that ensures that adequate care for the monkeys will be provided. And third, given these, it does not seem appropriate for the board to even consider options that would result in diverting or reallocating funds from other vital county projects in order to support a zoo expansion to accommodate these animals. Thanks.
Thank you. That is our first 10 speakers. Are there questions from the supervisors of any of our first 10 speakers? Supervisor Stobing.
Chair, I was wondering if David Wade could come up to the microphone.
David.
Thanks, David. You know, in the 3 public hearings that we've had on this, you know, there's been a lot of discussion of the costs associated with the care and upkeep of the 2 colonies of rhesus and 1 colony of stumptails. Is there a difference between the rhesus macaques and the stumptails in terms of aggression, propagation, all that?
Yes, there's significant differences. As far as with the reproduction, and the stumptails do not reproduce readily. They're much slower to reproduce. We have many adult females there that never had or probably never will have children or have offspring. I would say that we fluctuate with maybe 4 infants to maybe 5 infants a year at the most. Some years we've only had 2, whereas with the rhesus, on the other hand, they're very reproductively active and successful in that manner.
I mean, I'm aware that when the County Department of Administration put together together their memo, they had to rely principally on data given to them from the Primate Research Center. One of the key building blocks of that memo was a UW estimate, or a Primate Research Center estimate, that it costs a little over $3.50 per day per animal for the 150 monkeys that are there. And I know this is probably hard for you, but yet you've got 7 years of experience tending to those animals. Is that maybe an overestimate?
I would think so. I mean, generally the cost to the UW, from my understanding and from having some insight from working there, is that the $100,000 a year ballpark was reasonable. And for the 150 monkeys, you can do the math yourself to figure out what that would be the daily cost.
One last question. Well, I mean, I guess we could go through that memo and probably pick it apart. There were estimates for water and sewer costs of $7,000, and I know that seemed a little high to me.
Just a question?
A question? That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Further questions? If not, yes, we do. Supervisor Ryan.
The last gentleman that spoke to us, please.
That would be Joe Tulin.
You're a staff of the University of Wisconsin?
Pardon me?
A staff member?
Yes, I am.
When is it that you found out that you were going to lose the grant that was subsidizing the monkeys?
I am not privy to that particular aspect of it, and I would defer to another speaker who will be coming up later that has far more, that is far more familiar with the financial details.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Supervisor Van Duzen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question for the last speaker as well. Thank you, sir. Could you estimate for us what the growth of the population is on an annual basis, and what we can expect if all the monkeys were to be kept here?
You're talking of, at the current size, we've discussed this as the veterinary staff discussed this in total, and then someone else will again speak to this some more, but I believe it's in the neighborhood of at least 10 to 20 infants per year in the Reese's colony.
And their average lifespan is somewhere in the
30 to 40 years.
30 to 40 years. And well, I guess that...
I mean, you will have a population, you will have growth of this population. And I know it's been addressed, and some people have talked about sterilizing the animals and things like that. Yeah, you can do that, but of course you'll lose the young animals that are in the exhibit now. They'll grow up and you won't have any of the young animals that people like to watch.
How has the population been maintained up until now at a fairly constant level?
Animals have been removed as necessary, and the attending veterinarian for the primate center itself will address that specifically, but animals have been pulled out of that colony. As I stated in my presentation, it is not as if the zoo facility exists all on its own. When animals get hurt or injured or what have you, need medical care, are rejected for social reasons, those animals are pulled back to the main primate center. And so, you know, that capacity does not exist at the zoo right now. And with the growth of the population, you know, where are all these animals going to go? And that's one of the things that would have to be decided if you were to keep the animals here.
Thank you very much.
Further questions? If not, we'll move on to our next speakers. First, we have Joe Chemnitz, 2218 Fox Avenue, to be followed by Dr. Lyndon Goodley. Again, I'll remind speakers that you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, and thank you very much. I am the interim director of the Wisconsin Regional Primate Research Center and a resident of County District 10. I'd like to take a few moments to address the history of the Primate Center's presence at Vilas Park Zoo and the issues of funding and timing of our withdrawal from the facility there. We're one of 7 centers in the National Institutes of Health Regional Primate Research Program nationally, which was established in the early 1960s by special congressional action, primarily to advance knowledge that would improve human health from study of non-human primates. Since the facility at the zoo was built in 1963, various groups and species of macaques have been kept there. Currently, there are approximately 90 rhesus monkeys living in two separate groups, one established in 1972 and the other in 1981, and one group of approximately 50 stump-tailed macaques, which was established in 1983. I mentioned the dates in part because there's the implication in the resolution that all of those animals have been there since 1963, and that's off by as much as 20 years. All of the financial support and responsibility for the management and care of the monkeys, as well as the maintenance of the building, have been provided by the Wisconsin Primate Center and the University of Wisconsin-Madison since 1963. Observational studies were conducted at the facility, and the colonies served as a breeding resource for research conducted on campus. Also, the monkeys have been on display to the public for enjoyment and education at no cost to the city or county for 35 years. The facility has become decreasingly useful for its specified purpose of serving as a research resource during the last decade. Reasons for this include a marked decrease in funding and interest in doing observational studies, decreased appropriateness of the rhesus colony for breeding purposes because of genetic concerns, limitations on uses of monkeys derived from the colony per agreement between the director of the zoo and former directors of the Primate Center, and increasing operational expenses. Parenthetically, regarding the agreement, it's important to note that this understanding between former directors of the Primate Center and the director of the zoo was not officially endorsed by either the university or the National Institutes of Health. Furthermore, the building is showing its age and needs significant renovation. These factors led us to the decision last spring to withdraw from the facility. The decision was discussed with the director of the zoo in late spring and has been publicized since the summer of 1997. NIH reviewed the matter and informed us in a letter dated October 30th of 1997 that effective February 1 of this year, we would not be allowed to use funds from our base operating grant to operate the facility at the zoo because it was no longer serving its purpose as a resource for NIH research. The termination of support was reported by the news media locally and nationally 3 months ago. We had indicated a readiness to donate at least some of the monkeys and the building to the county for the use of the zoo as early as last spring. However, there are significant operational and managerial concerns that would make this transfer to the zoo difficult, as others are elaborating tonight. We began exploring the option of transferring the monkeys to other sites as discussion of the possibility that some might be able to remain at the zoo continued. In January, the Tulane Primate Center agreed to accept most or all of our rhesus monkeys now at the zoo. A conservation group in Thailand has asked to receive our stump-tailed macaques, and we're carefully considering this opportunity. We've delayed moving the monkeys for at least a month so that county administrators could consider options. However, unless the university has a firm commitment by March 2nd of the county's agreement to accept full responsibility for the monkeys and the facility, beginning January 1st, 1999, we will resume our own plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Dr. Lyndon Goodley, 405 Moe Circle, Stoughton, to be followed by Joan Schiffler.
Hello, my name is Dr. Lyndon Goodley. I'm a laboratory animal veterinarian employed by the University of Wisconsin. I serve as one of the attending veterinarians for the graduate school and as a clinical veterinarian in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. I received my undergraduate degree from Tulane University in New Orleans and my doctorate of veterinary medicine degree from Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. I still call Louisiana home. I love jambalaya, crawfish pie, and filet gumbo. I'm here to tell you about and hopefully relieve any fears or concerns you have in regards to the Tulane Regional Primate Center. I have been to the center, I have toured the facilities, and visited with staff. To reach the facility from New Orleans, one simply crosses Lake Pontchartrain via the causeway to Covington. The facility is located in this quiet, semi-rural community surrounded by oak and pine trees, an ideal location for monkeys. And that's not to mention, of course, the Louisiana climate as compared to Wisconsin's. The plan is to send our research rhesus monkeys currently housed at the Henry Valley Zoo to Tulane. There, our monkeys will be quarantined on site for 90 days to ensure that they do not acquire diseases from the Tulane colony and vice versa. Our monkeys will be tested for tuberculosis among other pathogens, observed for signs of subclinical or contagious disease, and medically treated for any clinical illnesses. Moms and infants as well as young juveniles will be paired housed, while the remaining animals will be housed individually for the duration of the quarantine period. At the end of the 90 days, the animals will be transferred to their permanent housing, which are outdoor, quarter-acre, open-pen corrals, about 50 animals per corral. The animals will be cared for by over 60 professional animal care and technical staff, personnel, and 7 full-time primate veterinarians. In addition to daily fresh food and water, the animals will also receive specific treats as part of their environment enrichment plan. In addition, Tulane employs a full-time animal behaviorist to assist in management decisions regarding the breeding, weaning, culling, and the like. Most of the animals will stay in their existing social groups and serve as part of the breeding population. Some animals will be placed in smaller breeding groups depending on their compatibility. The remaining few that cannot be successfully placed in breeding colonies will humanely be used in biomedical research. The facility is equipped with X-ray equipment, full-time clinical and laboratory services, fully staffed surgical units, emergency and critical care capabilities, and most importantly, an experienced staff with expertise in primatology. I have distributed to you a fact sheet on the Tulane Regional Primate Center, and I've also posted photos of some of their outdoor open pen corral and corn crib housing, and please take a look at them. The warm environment in which our monkeys will be placed in at Tulane will be equivalent to, no, more likely better than, the environment they will be placed in at the Henry Valley Zoo. If this county board is committed to doing what's best for these research rhesus monkeys and the taxpayers of Dane County, and I know that you are, then you will have to ask the tough question. Can this county provide the quality facility, ongoing medical, surgical, and support services, as well as the expertise that these monkeys deserve and will receive from Tulane? Furthermore, as a taxpayer myself, it would be a hard sell to convince me that my tax dollars could not be better spent supporting the establishment of youth centers, upgrading our police and firefighters, or completing the existing zoo projects in which the expertise is already present. I personally do not believe that you will find or can provide a better location than Tulane Regional Primate Center. Finally, I would ask you to make your decision on logic and reason.
20 seconds.
Not unfounded and irresponsible allegations regarding Tulane. Otherwise, you may end up making a monkey out of the taxpayers of Dane County. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Joan Scheffler, 2127 Vintage Drive, Oregon, to be followed by Christine Parks.
Good evening. My name is Joan Scheffler, and I'm a Fitchburg resident. I'm employed by the Wisconsin Primate Research Center as a medical technologist in the diagnostic laboratory, with additional responsibilities for the genetic management of our breeding colonies. I'd like to discuss the genetic management and breeding strategies in captive colonies, as I believe these topics impact the resolution before you. If the county accepts ownership of the Vilas Zoo monkey exhibit, your staff must decide whether the colony will remain reproductively active. I believe that the success and popularity of the monkey exhibit is dependent on the presence of infants and juveniles. Everyone loves to watch the mothers and aunts care for and transport the infants and the frolic and play of the juveniles. Alternatively, if you elect to establish some form of birth control, the colony without infants will be a significantly less active, less entertaining group that will eventually become a colony of aged monkeys. If you propose to continue infant production, recognize that the goal of a responsibly managed captive breeding program is to reduce inbreeding and maximize genetic diversity, thus maintaining overall fitness. Loss of fitness can be exhibited as lower birth weight, lower rates of growth, and lower survival rates. A qualified staff person or consultant will be required to head this effort. To help you understand what a well-managed program is, I'd like to describe our center breeding colony program. Our breeding colony is comprised of approximately 200 animals that were selected from over 1,000 on the basis of the lowest degree of relatedness. Breeders are reassessed annually, and only unrelated pairs are bred. There is nothing random in this process. We have recently purchased 8 new animals at a cost of $16,500 to expand and diversify our genetic pool. In order to further maximize our genetic heterogeneity, guidelines have been established that limit the number of offspring of males to 2 per year. This center program is in sharp contrast to the situation at the zoo. At the zoo, we can only indirectly affect the group genetics through selective culling because of past behavioral research protocols. These protocols dictated that the zoo colonies remain closed to the introduction, essentially, of new animals and required unrestricted breeding of the increasingly more closely related individuals. This approach has been enforced for over 22 years and represents up to 5 generations. This is a critical time in the genetic life of the rhesus troops. If you're committed to maintaining a reproductively active rhesus colony, you will inherit one that is in immediate need of new genetic stock in some form, such as purchasing or trading animals, or a program of frozen semen artificial insemination, all of which require money, staff, and expertise. Consequently, these rhesus troops are an inappropriate choice for a breeding zoo exhibit. From a genetic perspective, the stumptail colony would be a far superior troop to retain, combined with their advantages of their less aggressive nature, their threatened status on the endangered list, and their lower birth rate. The stumptails have averaged only 5 births a year in the last 10 years, whereby the rhesus have averaged 34 births annually, significantly different. Even though the stumptails have been together as a group for approximately the same time, their low rate of reproduction has considerably slowed the undesirable effects of the closed breeding situation. If you elect to maintain a monkey population at the zoo, select the stumptails and allow the rhesus to be moved to the Tulane Primate Center that was just described to you. Though I personally believe, as a taxpayer, that there are more pressing human service needs to be met with our finite budget. In conclusion, regardless of the direction taken by this board tonight, I ask you as representatives of Dane County to recognize the contribution of the Wisconsin Regional Primate Center, the University of Wisconsin, and the National Institutes of Health in having provided this exhibit to the community for the past 35 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Christine M. Parks, 3790 Stone Pass, Oregon, to be followed by Jan Raymer.
Good evening. I'm here talking as a resident of the town of Rutland. I am also, however, I want to tell you that I am a veterinarian with the University of Wisconsin, and my primary responsibility are research and teaching animals at the university. I'm here to talk to you about the Primate Center's monkeys. I wish to speak about some concerns that have been expressed regarding the potential use of some of these animals in research projects by Tulane, the institution that the university has chosen as the best home for our Vilas Zoo monkeys. In particular, I want to tell you about the regulations regarding the use of animals in research. Animal research in the United States is a very highly regulated activity. Research with monkeys is regulated by the United States Department of Agriculture. The USDA performs unannounced inspections of all facilities at least yearly. The National Institute of Health, or NIH, is a major funding institution for biomedical research. They also require extensive adherence to strict guidelines for use of animals in research, and they also have requirements for reporting by the universities and institutions, as well as the ability to mount their own visits. There is also a voluntary association for the accreditation of laboratory animal care called ALAC, which visits member institutions periodically and assesses all aspects of the animal's care and use. The following points are important when you think about the regulation of animal research. First being the Wisconsin Regional Primate Research Center is regulated by the USDA, by NIH, and voluntarily by ALAC. The same is true of Tulane. All the regulatory organizations have requirements for the housing and husbandry of the research animals, of the physical facilities that they're housed in. They have rules on the quality and the quantity of veterinary care provided, and strong oversight of all research uses of the animals. Internal oversight also exists, mainly by what's called animal care and use committees, that must have at least one voting member of the community at large on the committee. These committees review all research performed on the animals for the humane care, appropriate housing, and use of the animals. Each investigator or scientist wanting to use any animals for research must explain and justify the use of the species of the animals, the number of animals to be used, alternatives to the use of animals, and all animal procedures to these animal care and use committees. The committee must approve the proposal before any work can be done with the animals. All aspects of the research must be done in a humane manner. The Wisconsin Primate Center, as well as Tulane, are subject, as I said, to unannounced visits by the USDA. The USDA comes unannounced. We have absolutely no clue that they're coming. They walk through the door, they say, today I want to go, and they tell us where they want to go, and we show them whatever animal facilities they wish. The centers are also report to NIH and have site visits by this Association for Accreditation at least every 3 months. In summary, I want you to realize that research with primates is under intense scrutiny by internal and external agencies. Some inspections are unannounced, some are announced, most are mandatory. Failure to comply with regulations can result in fines, loss of funding, loss of accreditation, or in the loss of the ability to do research by individuals or institutions. I provided you with a small handout that will give you some resources about the regulations, and I want you to make your decision based on the fact that animal research is humane, and that the fact that a few of these animals may be used does not necessarily mean they will be used in an inappropriate manner. In fact, I can assure you they will be used in an appropriate manner. And I also gave your chairman a copy just to give you an idea of the volume of regulations and the types of regulations that we, animals in research, are regulated by. So it is not a free-for-all, and it is highly regulated. And done in a very humane manner, and I don't think you should base your decision on fear that the animals will not be treated well at Tulane. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jan Raymer, Fitchburg, Wisconsin, to be followed by Kirk Bohm.
Hi. My name is Jan Raymer, and I'm a veterinarian with a rash of veterinarians speaking right now at the University of Wisconsin. I have a half-time position at the Primate Center, and while I am at the Primate Center, my clinical responsibilities do include the care of the macaques at the zoo. The other half-time of my appointment is as a special species clinician at the veterinary school, where I work with fourth-year students. But I've also, through that position, had the good fortune to consult with the Vilas Zoo and the Milwaukee County Zoo on specific cases. Before I became a veterinarian, though, I was a primate keeper for 10 years at the Brookfield Zoo, and for 2 years at the Indianapolis Zoo before that. And the Brookfield Zoo actually does have the largest non-human primate collection of any zoo in the country. And I'd like to share with you, I think that the reason I'm here tonight is that I think it's important for you to know, with the resolution in front of you, that keeping and exhibiting macaques in zoos is controversial and emotional subject even among zoos in this country. And I'd like to share with you that perspective. When I was at the Brookfield Zoo, we had 3 macaque species. And in the middle to late 80s, the Brookfield Zoo made the difficult decision to stop exhibiting those animals, basically to get out of the macaque business. And that decision was not made lightly, and it was based on a lot of information, not the least of which was that the risk and the cost of maintaining animals with a disease like herpes B, and you haven't heard much about that tonight, and Dr. O'Rourke will be telling you a little bit more about it later. But it's a disease that we consider all macaques infected with. It's a disease that has a low incidence of infection in humans, but if you are the human that gets it, it's a fatal disease. And so it has risk. People who work closely with macaques are going to have exposures to that disease, and those exposures are through bites or scratches, or recently there was a case of a death at the Yerkes Primate Center from a young woman who was splashed. There are hidden costs with regard to keeping macaques, and you need to know that if you're going to make the decision to keep these macaques here at this zoo. If there is an exposure, it's a very frightening experience. I was exposed to one of the macaques here at this zoo. I was taking a canine tooth that was broken out, and the instrument I was using slipped and went through 2 pairs of gloves into my thumb, and it was a frightening experience. In addition to that, there are costs involved. The animal has to be tested, the person has to be tested, and 2 weeks later those tests occur again. We figured out the cost of 1 exposure to herpes B, just the clinical cost, and that's $500 per exposure. You may have a handful of exposures a year, but the costs do add up. So I think that you should know that if you do choose to keep these animals, that the county will assume responsibility for these herpes exposures to both employees or, heaven forbid, to visitors. There are zoos who have chosen to keep macaques, and Milwaukee County Zoo is one of those zoos. They have snow macaques. They have a relationship with an infectious disease doctor. They have protocols that are established with regard to the care of those animals, and if something should happen and there is an exposure, their protocol is reviewed annually and is in fact currently under review for the 2nd time this fiscal year because of the death at Yerkes. They have annual training sessions. They bank serum on their employees, and they have, as I said, an annual review of their protocol. So for zoos that do choose to keep macaques, they have to be regulated and kept very strictly. Other things that were involved in Brookfield's decision to not exhibit macaques anymore were that their space and resource decisions are very difficult in zoos, and they're based on the species that need that space and resources. And the Brookfield Zoo decided that the macaques that they had were not endangered or threatened, and that the space and resources could be better used for another species that needed that space and resource. In fact, the American Zoological Association has a committee. It's an advisory group to most North American zoos with regard to what kinds of monkeys should be given resources in zoos. And a list that they made in 1994 recommended the phase out of about 20 different monkey species. This was the monkey advisory group. And that included rhesus and stump-tailed macaques, just because they are well represented in research facilities and in European zoos, just for your information. I would also like to address the veterinary concerns. It's already been brought up before, but as a veterinarian, I have seen the facility at the Vilas Zoo, and it is not currently adequate for the care of sick or injured animals. So if you choose to keep these zoos, a lot of resources are going to have to be put into the renovation of the veterinary facility. Thank you. There have been discussions with the VMTH about that contract so that we could provide veterinary care, and certainly the expertise is there, but not the facility. Could the zoo provide the necessary care for these animals? Yes, I think they could, but not without considerable cost, renovation of the current facility, and years of commitment.
Thank you. Next we have Kirk M. Boehm, West 7306 County Highway H, New Glarus, Wisconsin, to be followed by Renee Goodroad.
Hello, my name is Kirk Boehm and I reside in New Glarus. First, I'd like to thank Dane County Board for giving me this opportunity to speak. I am currently employed at the UW Primate Center as a research program manager, and in this capacity I have the responsibility for assuring that the facilities meet all regulations. The Vilas Zoo facility was constructed 35 years ago, and at that time met contemporary standards for primate zoo displays. Because the building is quite old, there are some issues to keep in mind when you consider the possibility of maintaining animals in this facility. According to the Dane County Public Works Department, the need for a new roof in the next 5 years will cost approximately $23,000. Immediate general repairs will cost $14,000. A new furnace in the next 5 years will cost $15,000. And you'll find a more detailed breakdown of these costs in a report that was put together by the Dane County Department of Administration dated January 28, 1998. I'd like to add that you should consider the replacement of the heaters used to heat the outside housing areas for these animals. It's not in your report currently. These heaters currently sit outside in the elements, and it would be reasonable to expect to replace them in the next 7 to 10 years at the cost of approximately $25,000. Also in the same report, there's a budget item listed as replacement of plexiglass and framing with glass and new frames at a cost of $216,000. It has been suggested by some that this last item may not be needed to provide protection to the public from potential exposure to herpes B virus. Even if one agrees that the facility does not need to be completely enclosed year-round, thereby requiring air conditioning, one must realize it is still necessary to maintain 144 plexiglass wall and ceiling panels on the outside of the facility in order to provide the heat. These panels cost approximately $25,000, and conservatively, one can expect to replace these panels in the next 10 years. Also, because of lack of air conditioning, the panels need to be removed in the spring and then reinstalled in the fall. The cost of installation and removal is approximately $2,000 per year. So it must be considered that if you accept the enclosure of the facility as status quo, there are still substantial costs involved. I also would like to point out that we currently incur approximately $12,000 a year for heating expenses due to the poor insulating factor these plexiglass panels provide. Another issue that must be considered is that the regulatory requirements stipulate that the facility must ensure minimal risk of harm to the public. Therefore, when you are considering acceptable risk to the public, you need to realize that the USDA must also approve the design and agree that the risk to the public is acceptable. This will not be a unilateral decision. In any considerations for this facility, you must remember that there are regulations that you will have to abide with. I've heard suggestions such as straw bale construction for the housing facility, which I am not familiar with, but I doubt it could meet regulatory requirements. So in this regard, I ask that in your considerations you seek advice from the regulatory agencies to be sure you understand the impact that they may have on facility costs. I would also like to ask that the board consider the current day standards for zoo exhibits. Most primate exhibits today protect the public by enclosing the primates behind glass or separating the public by a moat, as is the situation in Milwaukee. There's also been some considerations to maintaining only a portion of the current colony, and I would suggest that if this is done, that one should consider the appearance of a half-empty facility, and if it would be acceptable to the public. It seems to me that one would want to occupy the entire facility, even though a smaller number of animals would be maintained. In closing, I would ask that you carefully examine the issue of not maintaining the entire facility for display, the cost of maintaining this facility, and the cost of minimizing the health risks to the public. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'd also like to point out that you have a handout that was provided to you with highlights on these items. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Renee Goodroad, 2730 Myrtle Street, Madison, to be followed by Marion Bean.
Hello, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. Dane County has already made a commitment to the care and feeding of a very large variety of animals by providing funding for the zoo. When we are looking at the alternatives, the first preference would be to extend this circle of animals that are already being cared and fed at the zoo to include the monkeys. After all, as my 19-year-old son said, what is a zoo without monkeys? If we're going to have a zoo, what is a zoo without monkeys? When you look at the numbers, if we look at the total population of Dane County, I think it would be something like 25 to 50 cents per person increase. I asked somebody, how many people go through the zoo in a summer, in a season, and I was told 450,000. And if we had contributions, this would come down to be like 25 cents per person or nothing. There's our options, but if we cannot find the funding, what my plea then is that we do find a humane placement for these animals. It's not an issue of research. It's an issue that a promise was made to this particular group of monkeys to not include them in invasive research. At a Ways and Means Committee meeting, one person asked what I thought was a very thoughtful question, and that was, well, why not send them to Tulane? And I thought, that really is a good question. I want to find out more. So I went to the internet, and I started reading articles, and I started talking to people, and I went to the library to get information. And one of the things that I found that struck me was a series of articles that was written by a woman named Deborah Bloom. She has written a series of articles as a journalist, not taking one position or the other. For her article, she was awarded the Pulitzer Prize. I wanted to share briefly with you. Now, this was just one scenario out of thousands that happened at Tulane. Paul was a crab-eating macaque with a dragging left arm. The nerves from the spinal cord to the arm, the relay system from the brain, had been severed in an experiment, a study of the body's response to major nerve loss. Paul had been a chunky monkey once, weighing almost 20 pounds, but when he died in 1989, he was down to a little over 7 pounds. This is how he died. First, he began to chew apart his nerve-dead arm. Isolated macaques do mutilate themselves, and Paul lived alone. He was too crippled and too defenseless to be housed with another animal. The chewing could go on. In an arm without feeling, there would be no pain to stop it. On February 16th, he attacked the arm as if it were a snake. Suddenly it came to coil around him. His teeth cracked the bones in his hand. His arm looked like it had been through a meat grinder, said Marion Rattieri, a veterinarian at the Tulane Regional Primate Research Center where Paul was housed. The vets decided to amputate it mid-arm, severing near the elbow. They were reluctant to take off the whole arm, which required breaking apart the shoulder socket. After surgery, Paul went back to his cage. He developed a wasting, draining diarrhea that responded to no drugs. He started ripping apart the stump of his arm again. Gangrene appeared in spreading black streaks. On July the 4th, Rattieri took off the rest of the arm, cracking apart the shoulder anyway. Paul kept losing weight. They tried force-feeding him with tubes into his stomach, but he continued to wither. He lost the strength to stand. He died down on the floor of his cage, head tucked against his remaining arm on August 26th. If we do not find a humane placement or alternative to Tulane, our Vilas monkeys will join the thousands of the other monkeys at Tulane. I know that not everybody is going to agree with me on this, but there are fates worse than death. Going to Tulane would be such a fate. If we cannot find humane placements for the monkeys, whatever we could not find humane placements for, it would almost be more compassionate and humane to euthanize them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Marion Bean, 9528 Argue Road, New Glarus, to be followed by Julie Smith.
Hi, my name is Marion Bean, and I am also employed by the university. I'm on the faculty of the university, but I'm certainly not speaking for the university tonight. I'm actually embarrassed by what the university has done tonight. I have a major question of why the university seems to be opposed to sending these animals to a sanctuary. What they have done tonight is stand up and tell you all sorts of horror stories and then ask you to use your logic to make decisive issues. I want to talk about one reality, and that's the reality of herpes. If they're really afraid of herpes, they should, of course, shut themselves down. Since 1993, when the virus was first isolated, only 40 cases have been documented, and those all involve personnel at research facilities, not zoos, research facilities. The woman who recently died from a splash was a researcher who was, in fact, holding an infected monkey, performing a procedure on him. She was not even wearing goggles. Now, if the researchers can't take basic precautions to protect themselves, I would urge that they turn over all their monkeys to zoos and sanctuaries, because there are no reported cases of herpes B in zoos and sanctuaries to the visitors or to the zookeepers. In Japan, Germany, and France, visitors to wild animal parks move freely among macaques and no infection has ever occurred. In India, rhesus macaques live communally with humans for hundreds of years and no infection is known to occur. The University of Wisconsin's own management for herpes B states, despite several thousand monkey-infected bites, scratches, and other exposures, herpes B must be considered an uncommon risk, the UW itself. Donald Lindbergh, head of the Behavioral Division of the San Diego Zoo, states herpes B infection is somewhat on a par of a wheel dropping off an airplane and hitting you on the head and killing you. It's just not a common thing, thank goodness. The CDC has currently no regulations regarding safety from macaques. The word around right now is that they are considering suggesting that people keep 5 feet away from them. I don't think that's a real problem at the zoo. We've also at other committees talked about putting up a plexiglass shield such as they have at hockey rinks. You're more likely probably to be hit by a hockey puck than monkey spit. The other couple of things that I'd like to talk about, we've heard a huge amount of all the costs that you're going to incur. We've also heard not only from David Wade but from Jonathan Berry that the $200,000 estimate is probably about double what the actual figures would be, because it won't be being used as a research facility anymore. It will simply be a zoo exhibit. We've heard about the need for vet care. I don't know, but I assume the zoo actually has vets who work there and who take care of primates, and unless all the zoo animals are simply being left uncared for, there may in fact be veterinary care available for them. But the other things that we can do, and I know that there's, one, we don't have this $250,000 to put up the plexiglass and the air conditioning. We have already written the MG&E Foundation to see if they will donate the cost of the electricity, gas and electricity. We haven't heard back from them. We have suggested a simple donation box outside the monkey facility. We think you could probably raise $100,000 per year from people simply going through the zoo. We would also recommend that you work with, and we could work with, the Madison Board of Realtors to see if the next zubilation, the one after rejuvenation is finished, could in fact be a zubilation on behalf of the monkeys. It's my understanding that the primary funding for the zoo right now comes from fundraisers and not actually from the county, so that there may be ways to get fundraising going here in Dane County and Madison in particular to raise money for them. The other thing that has been suggested, if you take responsibility for the monkeys and the county decides that it can only keep one of the colonies, can only keep the stumptails, can only keep one rhesus colony, that the others can be sent to a sanctuary. We have offers from 2 different sanctuaries in Texas
20 seconds.
to take them. Incidentally, the Primate Center was contacted by one of those sanctuaries some time ago and told that it would take the monkeys, would be willing to work to take those monkeys. The Primate Center did not respond to the sanctuary, but accepted Tulane's offer. And you've just heard what Tulane's offer means. Please support this resolution. Give us time to work.
Thank you. Next we have Julie Smith, 545 Pauline Street, Madison, to be followed by Helene Dwyer.
Hello, I want to weigh in too as a longtime county resident, and I'm also employed by the university as a faculty member, and I also pay taxes. I want to speak just to one small issue that kind of is something that I know about and that struck me very much the wrong way and kind of went to heart. And that's the idea that sterilizing the animals and managing them without offspring will somehow make them of no interest to zoo attendees. I have been very involved in not with monkeys, but with an even more prolific species, which is rabbits. And I've worked in sanctuaries for rabbits, national sanctuaries, for local sanctuaries, and I've worked with the Humane Society, and in all cases worked with children.
a lot. And yes, it is true that if you have a mixed group and you have babies in that group, the children will gravitate toward them, of course. But if they are not in that group, children have interest in adults. I can absolutely testify to that. It's a good thing adults don't, do not become uninteresting all of a sudden, or we would all be in trouble here. But children respond to animals, adult animals, in often a mature and sustained way, showing interest. And as I said, I worked in Camp Paw Print at the Humane Society in that aspect, working with children, and they like adult animals and they find them interesting. I don't think any of us as responsible pet owners would keep letting our pets reproduce so that we could produce a stream of infants to entertain our children. And I would suggest that an adult colony at the zoo would be very much appreciated by children and adults.
Thank you. Next, we have Helene Dwyer, 2918 Nottingham Way, Madison.
I come before you today again as a community member and taxpayer, also as a philosophy professor within the UW system, not given to goofiness regarding animals or children or anything, I hope. And also as a mother of a daughter who grew up with the monkeys and is now in her first year of college out of state and waiting for me to call tonight to tell her what you're going to do. As I listened to the speakers, I couldn't help asking myself why the Primate Center is so interested in having the monkeys sent to Tulane, even though in any case their responsibility, both financial and otherwise, will end. They are telling us that without baby monkeys, the exhibit won't be interesting. They're telling us that this money that they are projecting you are going to be having to produce will be taken away from human needs. They're also telling us that Tulane is monkey heaven, which is very different from what we can read in Deborah Bloom's work, The Monkey Wars. I'd like to say something more about Tulane, although a lot has been said on both sides. Beautiful climate will not be of much use to all the future babies born from these violent monkeys. The Primate Center representatives tell us that the colony will not be interesting without babies, but these very babies will be those used at Tulane in experiments involving infectious tropical diseases. Malaria and leprosy are two that are studied there, or to have their colons blocked or to be given simian aids. And these babies will be those who suffer most at Tulane, even if the monkeys that are now here do remain in a breeding colony. Certainly their offspring are intended for research. And we know that Peter Jerome at Tulane has said that he gives no word that the monkeys will not be used in research. About the supposed safeguards for animals used in research, one of which is the animal care and use committees at institutions. I have some experience because as a citizen I observed the ACOOC meetings at the veterinary school for a semester. And all I can say is that I never heard a proposal turned down, even though I do remember one which seemed to be inspired by the fact that some about to expire medicine for glaucoma had been given to a scientist and he needed permission to use it. And rather than there being a need to find out something, there was a need to use this gift. So all I can say is, as a citizen, non-scientist, a philosopher observing, I don't think that there's great safeguards to be had, at least in the ACOOC committees. I don't know about I do know a little bit about the Animal Welfare Act, and also does not provide much safeguard. I do beg you then to consider what you would be doing to give the community some time to raise money and not to give in to scare tactics. I wonder if they are motivated by some promise of a future quid pro quo. Otherwise, I don't understand what would make them rational. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes our second group of 10 speakers. Are there questions from the supervisors of our last group of 10 speakers? Supervisor Salkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question of Mr. Kemetz, is it? Mr. or Doctor? Doctor. Dr. Kemetz. Could you tell me what is going to happen to the staff, equipment, and support facilities that are currently being used to support the macaque population?
If all the monkeys leave the Vilas facility, the staff members who currently care for the animals will join our remaining staff on campus. There will be no jobs lost as a result of this action. And the way we're handling that in terms of our budget on campus is by not replacing 2 limited term employees whose terms have recently expired, and by reducing the amount of student help that we employ.
If the Dane County Board were to assume some kind of relationship with the colony in terms of support, would it be able to turn to the university on a contract basis?
That's a mechanism that would be unprecedented at the Primate Center. However, the School of Veterinary Medicine Teaching Hospital does have such relationships with the private sector, and it would be their call as to whether or not such an arrangement were feasible.
If Dane County could not rely on the university in some kind of contractual relationship, what is your opinion about the existing staff or the existing population of expertise within Wisconsin to supply such services?
My gut feeling is that it would be inadequate in this region without the support of the university. However, I don't claim any special expertise in that area, and the question might be better addressed to one of the veterinarians.
Well, I would like to address that question, and I will sit down and just say anyone who could answer that would be appreciated.
Okay.
I'm hearing Dr. Hall is, that'll be later?
Well, I don't think Dr. Hall is registered to speak, but after we're done with the speakers, we can ask that question of Dr. Hall.
That'll be fine. Thank you.
All right. Supervisor Clouder.
Thank you, sir. Joe, could you just pick it up? One statement that I've heard was that if the county wishes to keep these animals, the university will pay for the rest of the year. Is that correct or not correct?
If the county makes a commitment to take over the responsibility for the animals and the facility, effective January 1 of 1999, the university has committed to provide support for the animals and the facility until that date. What the university is requiring is a firm commitment on the part of the county to do that by March 1st.
So if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is, yes, but the entire situation, county, is yours after January 1, 99.
That's correct.
Okay. The housing issue has come up from both sides. Can you give me a close figure, or relatively close figure just from your experience? To fix the facility, to upgrade it, what kind of cost are we looking at?
Well, the DOA estimate was something in excess of $200,000 in the very near future to do that.
What was your belief on that? What was your feeling?
I think those figures are good estimates.
$200,000. If the county if the county is not in this position, but if the county even says, we'd like to study this for 6 months, there's 39 different opinions out here.
Mm-hmm.
And March 1st is over, and from what I'm hearing then, the university would be out of this situation. Is that right? Let's say we just want to look at it a little longer.
Unless we hear the commitment from the county by March 1st, the university's position is that we would proceed with our plans. The arrangements for transfer of animals to Tulane are pretty well set, and we would be able to move forward rather quickly with that arrangement. If we proceed with the plans to transfer the stump-tailed macaques back to Thailand, there's some additional consideration that's still required. I personally haven't visited that facility. We're collecting opinions from people around the world actually who are directly familiar with the facility. We wouldn't want to send the animals there unless we were sure that it would be appropriate for them. And it may take longer because of this information gathering and also because of international regulations regarding the international transport of threatened or endangered species.
My last question is the dollar figures that have come out of the Ways and Means. Have you read them?
Yes.
Accurate or not accurate?
I think that they're generally very good estimates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Kimnitz, I heard you say earlier that you had had negotiations with our zoo director probably back in the spring. And I assume that those negotiations or whatever conversations went on from that point up until the time it hit the newspaper, 3 months ago. So I guess I'm a little concerned, and I won't even ask that question. I find it amazing that we're just now finding out about something this monumental. And with all these people here, didn't the university think we would have some resistance to just shipping the monkeys off? I mean, why wasn't this brought to the whole county board if you felt perhaps, that something else, another dialogue or another level? I mean...
It's, the issue has been, I would say, extensively covered by the media locally since last summer. You're certainly correct that the county board was not asked to address the issue until more recently. But I think there's been public awareness of the issue since last summer.
Can you tell me this? If these monkeys, the ones that you're talking about that may have the herpes B virus, why all of a sudden is that something that we should be afraid of when they've been there, some of them, for 35 years?
There will be no demonstrations in the chambers. Dr. Kemmons.
Actually, knowledge of the herpes B virus has been around for several decades, and it has been widely recognized that the mode of transmission is through bites and scratches primarily, or direct transfer of bodily fluids. What has heightened sensitivity to this issue was a fatality that occurred in Georgia in December. And in that case, the mode of transmission seems to have been a casual splash of unknown fluid from a monkey cage into a young woman's eye, indicating increased risk.
And then my final question is, the monkeys that you're intending to send across international lines, and then you have monkeys that may go to Tulane, what compensation is the University of Wisconsin receiving for all the moving around of the monkeys?
We're not receiving any compensation for it.
Oh, so we're going to pay for, how much is it going to cost to ship the monkeys? Just a ballpark.
We're looking into, you're referring to the stumptails? Or
all of them. I mean, it's going to cost money from the league.
Tulane is paying for the transfer.
And that's about approximately?
$6,000. And the arrangements for transport to Thailand, should that eventuality come to pass, include the possibility of government transport, military transport, on sort of a humanitarian basis, although the prospects for that seem to be dimming at the moment. Or as an alternative, Senator Baucus from Montana, who visited Thailand on a trade mission last fall, has taken an interest in this issue, and he is using his offices to leverage some commercial transport at no cost.
And I'm sorry, I have one more question. The NIH, when the contract was originally developed, and I'm sure it's been revised over the years, was there any indication 3 years ago that this may happen so that you all were able, because you're scholars, and now here you are faced with a dilemma? I mean, it just doesn't seem right when all of a sudden you have to make this decision.
You're correct that we foresaw this eventuality years ago, and there had been discussion of the issue. We did not take action on it until last spring, because until that time there was research underway at the facility. That particular research was not funded, adequately to cover the costs. But there was a graduate student finishing her PhD data collection, and we didn't want to truncate that process. So immediately upon completion of that project, I visited Dr. Hall and presented the likelihood that we would be undertaking a phased withdrawal of the facility. And at that time, there wasn't a great deal of urgency. It was important to us for budgetary concerns because the resource at the Biolis facility was no longer supportive of our research program. And we were looking to relieve ourselves of that financial burden, if you will. But then last fall, as a result of an investigation by the National Institutes of Health of the role of our Biolis facility in our research program, the decision was taken by NIH to terminate our funding for that facility effective February 1 this year. And that action has provided the greater urgency for making decisions.
Further questions? Supervisor Butler.
One of the speakers suggested that you prefer Tulane as an alternative to sending the rhesus monkeys to a sanctuary. Is that true, and if so, why?
Well, when considering options for these animals, Tulane was one of my first thoughts because although I have not yet visited the facility, I will next month. I am familiar with it. I've seen photographs and had discussion with staff members down there. I am well aware that it's in a relatively rural location on a large tract of land, 500 acres total, heavily wooded, with a substantial number of large open-air enclosures for the animals and a climate that's suitable for rhesus and stump-tailed macaques to live outdoors all year round. The part of the Tulane's mission as part of the national NIH program is also to serve as a breeding facility. The majority of animals at Tulane are used for breeding. They're not used for research. The figure is somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the animals are simply part of the breeding program. And most of those animals live in these outdoor enclosures. So I contacted Pete Cherone, and in fact, he was interested, and we were able to make this arrangement fairly quickly in January.
My question is, do you prefer this over a sanctuary where none of the monkeys, I gather, from the speakers, would be used for research?
I do, because did Joanne speak yet? We'll be hearing more about sanctuaries shortly, but in brief, there's no regulatory oversight or little regulatory oversight for sanctuaries. Anyone can stand up and say, I have a monkey sanctuary, I will take your monkeys. And that in no way implies any guarantee for the appropriate care of those animals in the long term. On the other hand, as Dr. Parks has presented, there is extensive regulatory oversight of federally funded research facilities, such as Tulane.
Supervisor Davis.
Sir, would you go over again why the Primate Research Center funding was terminated?
The facility was constructed originally, and there has been continuous funding since 1963 on the grounds that that would serve our NIH research mission on campus, as well as whatever work was done at the zoo. And as a result of public discussion of the uses of the animals at the zoo, or from the zoo, it became clear that they were not available for the research programs for which NIH was supporting the facility. And that is the reason for the termination of funding.
Thank you. Supervisor Stobick.
Thank
you. Joe, you made a comment about NIH was terminating funding. I want you to really clarify that because NIH is not really reducing the base grant funding for the Primate Center. It is only saying, is it not, that the base grant dollars cannot go for the breeding facility at the zoo. And they're saying dollars can't go for that facility because of the current limitation on the use of those monkeys for only non-invasive research, correct? Well, maybe that last part is an assumption I'm making, but...
There are several reasons why the facility was decreasingly important for our research mission. And the limitations on the use of the animals was one of those reasons, but not the only reason. As Joan Scheffler reported, there were concerns about the genetic composition of the colony and the appropriateness of those animals for that reason and other reasons, such as the lack of funding or really much interest in doing observational studies at the zoo, which is in marked contrast to the program when it was first established in the 60s. It was at that time, when the National Primate Research Center program was first established, that large numbers of non-human primates were kept in research environments and available for systematic study. And during those first couple of decades of the Primate Center's history, we learned an awful lot about the normal behavior of those animals, about their reproductive cycles, about nutrition, etc. General husbandry things as part of the support for the scientific program. At the present time, there's relatively much less of that sort of work underway, and little of it